He was ridiculing me in front of his friends because I didn't have a job. What they didn't realize was that I owned the very company that signed all their paychecks, a fact they'd discover right before I fired them all. I kept my composure through yet another night, filled with their callous remarks. "She can't even get a foot in the door for a basic job," my husband Mark chortled, tapping his glass against his colleagues. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I was the one who had retained the executive search firm that found every single one of them. And tomorrow, that very firm would be assisting me in a complete corporate purge. The crystal tumbler felt cold in my hand as I observed them from the other side of our expansive, marble-floored living room. 5 men, all in impeccably tailored suits, all senior directors at Apex Innovations, and all personally selected by me through a complex web of shell corporations and discreet recruitment agencies. And there was Mark, my husband of 7 years, their director of strategy, leading the pack of wolves. "Remember when she actually tried to interview at Apex?" Mark went on, loosening his designer tie. "God, I would have paid to see that disaster unfold. But before we get into the details, I just want to pause and say thank you for being on this journey with me. If you're finding strength in these stories of justice, think about subscribing. It costs nothing, and it's a huge help in building this supportive community. Now, let's get back to it. If only he had a clue." That interview had been my clandestine quarterly review of the company's middle management, a carefully arranged performance conducted through my maze of holding companies. I had built Apex Innovations from scratch 12 years ago, long before Mark ever entered my life. The company was my first true passion, my path to redemption after witnessing my father's small software firm get devoured by ruthless corporate giants. "Well, at least she's persistent," quipped Robert from the marketing department. "How many rejection letters is that this month, Mark?" "I've lost track," Mark smirked, pouring himself another glass of the 25-year-old single malt I'd purchased. My single malt. In fact, everything in this house was mine. The modern art hanging on the walls, the custom-made Italian furniture, even the ridiculously expensive watch on his wrist. All of it paid for by the very company he was convinced had turned me down. I took a slow sip of my water, perfecting my practiced facade of quiet shame. It was the same mask I wore when I first met Mark at a lavish charity ball. By then, I had already learned the hard way that my level of success was a magnet for parasites. 3 disastrous relationships with men who viewed me as their personal ATM had made me intensely cautious. So when I met Mark, I decided to run a little social experiment. I introduced myself as a struggling freelance graphic designer, drove a sensible sedan, and lived in a modest downtown apartment. In the beginning, Mark seemed different. He was encouraging, or so I thought. "You'll find your footing. I know it," he'd tell me during those early days. "Just don't give up." But the moment we got married and he moved into what he believed was our home, his true colors began to show. His success, my success, didn't just change him, it unmasked him. "Hey, honey," Mark called out to me now, his voice saturated with condescending sympathy. "Maybe you should try that little cafe down the road. I think they're looking for servers." The room erupted in laughter again. I managed a faint, weak smile, playing my part to perfection. But on the inside, my mind was running through the final checklist. I was reviewing the mountain of evidence my private investigators had gathered over the last 12 months. The off-the-books meetings with our competitors, the wildly inflated expense claims, the small but consistent leaks of proprietary data that just so happened to line up perfectly with boosts in Mark's private stock portfolio. "I think I'm going to turn in," I said quietly, embodying the defeated wife. "I have a big day tomorrow, another interview." "Don't wait up for us, sweetheart," Mark called out as I walked away. "We're celebrating David's promotion. It might be a late one." David, my newest mole in the senior management team. Tomorrow, he would be the one meticulously documenting their drunken admissions, adding the final layer to the airtight case we had been constructing. Inside my private study, the the door securely locked against their boisterous celebration, I sat down at my desk. A hidden panel in the wall slid back without a sound, revealing my true command center. 3 large monitors flickered to life, showing the real-time global operations of Apex Innovations. A small empire built on years of calculated risks, relentless work, and ironclad non-disclosure agreements. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Lena, my most trusted executive and one of the handful of people who knew who I really was. Final docs are locked and loaded. Board members have been briefed. Tomorrow's meeting is a go. A slow smile spread across my face as I thought about the carefully staged drama that was about to unfold. The board had only ever known me as Catherine Vance, the reclusive founder who communicated exclusively through encrypted video conferences. Tomorrow, for the first time, they would meet their CEO in the flesh. Not as the enigmatic figure on the screen, but as Mark's unemployable wife. My fingers brushed against the stack of termination papers on my desk. There was one for Mark and one for every single member of his little boys' club. Each document was supported by months of evidence, vetted by our legal department, and was completely unassailable. The sharp crash of breaking glass echoed from downstairs, followed by another roar of laughter. There was a time when such blatant disrespect for my home would have sent me into a rage. Now it just felt like another line item for the file: improper use of company property for personal recreation. I closed my eyes, letting the familiar, soothing hum of the servers wash over me. Tomorrow was going to change everything. But for tonight, I let myself relish the quiet before the storm, recalling my father's advice. Success isn't about being the loudest person in the room, he used to say. It's about having the wisdom to wait, to watch, and to choose the perfect moment to strike. That perfect moment was finally here. I heard Mark and his cronies stumbling out to their chauffeured cars, their drivers, my employees who were discreetly recording their inebriated state with dashboard cameras. More evidence for the pile. I slipped into my nightclothes, the same simple pajamas I'd worn for years to maintain my cover. One final night of playing the part. Tomorrow, I'd wake up as Mark's underestimated wife. But by the time the sun set, I would be known only as Catherine Vance, CEO of Apex Innovations and the architect of their demise. Through the bedroom window, I watched the taillights of their cars vanish into the darkness. In just 12 hours, they would show up at their offices, nursing massive hangovers, completely oblivious to the fact that their entire world was about to be turned upside down. The thought brought a final, satisfied smile to my face as I drifted into a deep sleep, dreaming of the sweet justice that tomorrow would bring. The morning arrived with the precision of a well-laid military operation. I was awake long before Mark, watching him fumble through his hangover as he rushed to get ready for what he assumed would be just another Tuesday at the office. He had no idea that I had already been at the Apex Innovations headquarters for hours. At 6:30 a.m., I had slipped in through a service entrance, dressed in a deliberately bland pantsuit from a generic department store, a stark contrast to my usual designer wardrobe. Lena met me in the basement security office, far from any curious eyes. "Everything is set," she whispered, handing me a visitor's pass. "The interview is booked for 9 a.m. in HR. Mark's team has their daily briefing at the same time. David will make sure they're kept busy." The visitor's pass felt alien pinned to my blazer. Emily Shaw, interview candidate. For years, I had run my company from a distance, through cameras and encrypted reports. But today's performance required a more personal approach. I needed to see for myself just how far the rot had spread. I sat in the main lobby, having arrived a full hour early to play the part of the eager applicant, desperate for a chance. The security guard at the front desk gave me a cursory glance before turning his attention back to greeting the stream of executives arriving for their day of reckoning. At 8:45, I watched Mark stride confidently through the lobby, so full of himself that he didn't even notice me hiding behind my prop reading material. the company's own annual report. Ms. Shaw? The HR manager, a man named Thomas, appeared at exactly 9 a.m. I recognized him from his employee file, competent but overly eager to curry favor with the senior leadership. Please follow me. The elevator ride to the HR department was filled with the sort of bland corporate small talk I had worked so hard to cultivate in our company culture. Great weather today, and the commute wasn't too bad, was it? All the while, employees gave polite, dismissive nods to the woman they assumed was just another hopeful applicant. Thomas led me through the open plan office I had designed myself years ago. We'll start with a quick skills test, he explained, and then move on to a panel interview with a few of our team leads. His tone had that subtle, condescending edge reserved for candidates they had already written off. The skills assessment was almost laughably simple. Basic logic puzzles I could have solved in my sleep. I deliberately made a few small, believable errors, fully committing to the role of the nervous interviewee. Through the glass walls of the office, I could see Mark and his cronies in their morning meeting, sharing a laugh about something. Probably another applicant they had decided to mess with for their own amusement. "Well," Thomas said, looking over my intentionally flawed results, "this is interesting." The long pause he took said it all. Let's proceed to the panel interview. The conference room he showed me to had a stunning view of the city, a view I typically enjoyed from my private office 20 floors above. 3 middle managers were waiting for me inside, all of them wearing the same look of bored superiority. I knew each of their faces from their personnel files. I knew their salaries, their performance reviews, their dirty little secrets. "So, Ms. Shaw," the first interviewer began, not even bothering to introduce himself, "I see you've been between roles for a little while now." "Yes," I answered softly, adding a slight, practiced tremor to my voice. "It's a tough market out there. And what makes you believe you're qualified to work at a company like Apex Innovations?" the second interviewer asked, barely looking up from his phone. I launched into the carefully rehearsed backstory we had created, a believable mix of genuine skills obscured by a veneer of desperation. With every answer I gave, I could feel them becoming more and more dismissive. They had already made up their minds about me, just as they had with countless other qualified candidates who didn't fit their narrow mold. Just then, I saw Mark walk past the conference room. He did a double take when he saw me, then a smirk spread across his face as he pulled out his phone. A moment later, the phones of all 3 interviewers buzzed in unison. I didn't have to see their screens to know what was happening. He was texting them, telling them about his wife's latest pathetic attempt to find a job. The rest of the interview was a masterclass in corporate cruelty. There were subtle digs, knowing glances exchanged between the panelists, and barely concealed yawns. I mentally cataloged every microaggression, every clear violation of our own HR policies, all while maintaining my mask of nervous hopefulness. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Shaw," Thomas said finally, his tone making it clear that this was the end of the road. "We'll be in touch." As I walked towards the elevators, I heard Mark's voice from around the corner. "No way, was that your wife? Man, she is really desperate. Did you see that suit? I think it was from a clearance rack." I just kept walking, letting their laughter echo behind me. It was all just fuel for the fire that was about to consume them. In my purse, my real phone buzzed with a series of messages from Lena. Board members arriving, legal team on standby, security ready to make their move. The final act of my charade was about to commence. I slipped into a nearby restroom and entered the last stall, where Lena had stashed a garment bag for me earlier that morning. Inside was my real armor, a meticulously tailored Armani suit, a pair of Louboutin heels, and the CEO's security badge that had never before been seen in public. As I transformed from Emily Shaw, the failed job applicant, into Catherine Vance, the CEO of Apex Innovations, their mocking laughter still rang in my ears. In 30 minutes, I would walk into that boardroom not as a supplicant, but as their supreme authority. I checked my reflection one last time, adjusting the simple pearl necklace that had belonged to my mother. Success is silent, she used to say, until the perfect moment to roar. That moment had finally arrived. I stepped out of the restroom as Catherine Vance for the very first time in my own building. I watched as employees' eyes widened, their minds struggling to connect the confident, powerful executive before them with the nervous interviewee from just a few moments ago. Let them stare. The real performance was about to start. The sharp click of my Louboutins on the marble floor was like a drumbeat, announcing my every step as I headed for the executive wing. Employees scrambled out of my way, their confusion almost palpable as they tried to place my now familiar but completely transformed face. The whispers began almost instantly, the news of the mysterious CEO's sudden appearance spreading like a virus through the company's internal messaging system. I took the private elevator, the one Mark had always gossiped about, which was installed for the phantom CEO's exclusive use. As I ascended, a text from Lena confirmed that the stage was set. The board members were all seated. Mark and his team were still in their morning briefing. Security was standing by. The elevator doors opened directly into the boardroom's private antechamber. Through the frosted glass doors, I could see the silhouettes of our board members, all of whom were aware of what was about to happen. But they weren't my first stop. I turned left, making my way toward the executive conference room where Mark and his inner circle were no doubt still celebrating their perceived superiority. Standing in the shadows of the hallway, I could hear their voices clearly through the door they had carelessly left ajar. "You should have seen her face during that interview," Mark was saying, his voice dripping with that smug tone I had come to loathe. My own wife, thinking she could actually get a job here. I mean, what's next? Is she going to try to become CEO? A wave of raucous laughter followed. "Classic case of delusions of grandeur," Robert from marketing added. "Remember at your birthday party when she tried to give us pointers on the Starlight project? Oh God, that was rich. Telling us how we should rethink our client strategy, as if she has any clue how this business actually operates." The irony was almost too perfect. The Starlight Project's new strategy had been my own, carefully fed to the team through a series of intermediaries. It had saved the company millions and secured 3 new major clients. So should we tell her she bombed the interview or just let HR do the dirty work? Mark asked, prompting another round of cruel laughter. It was time. I stepped into the doorway, my presence immediately casting a long shadow over their morning coffee and pastries. The laughter died instantly. "Actually," I said, my voice resonating with the authority of 12 years of command, "I think I'll deliver that news myself." The look of pure shock on their faces was everything I had hoped for and more. Mark's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips, the color draining from his face as he tried to reconcile the image of his wife with the aura of absolute power I now projected. What are you doing here?" he stammered. "And why are you dressed like the CEO of Apex Innovations?" I finished for him, stepping fully into the room. Exactly like that, as a matter of fact. Robert started to let out a nervous laugh, then cut himself short when he realized no one else was joining in. David, my plant, was already calmly gathering his belongings, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. "This is a restricted floor," Mark tried, attempting to claw back some semblance of control. "Security will be here any second." "They're already here," I replied coolly, as 2 of my top security officers appeared in the doorway behind me, though not for the reason you think. I took out my phone and sent a single text message. Instantly, every screen in the conference room lit up with a single document, the company's original articles of incorporation, bearing my signature and my photograph. "Catherine Vance," I announced, watching their faces twist in disbelief as the reality finally crashed down on them. "Founder and CEO of Apex Innovations, or, as you know me, Mark's unemployable wife." The silence that followed was deafening. Mark's face had gone from pale to a sickly shade of green. His eyes darted between me and the documents displaying his wife of 7 years as the owner of everything he had ever boasted about building. "This is impossible," he whispered. "You're just—" "Just what, Mark?" I challenged him. "Just your wife? Just someone who couldn't even land an entry-level job?" I walked to the head of the table, my table, and took a seat. "Tell me, how does it feel to realize you've been mocking your own boss for the last several years?" Robert shot up from his chair, which screeched horribly against the floor. I should go." "Sit down," I commanded, my voice like a whip crack cutting through his panic. "None of you are going anywhere just yet." I pressed another button on my phone. The screens flickered, now displaying a compilation of security footage, incriminating email chains, and recorded conversations. Every joke at my expense, every moment of mockery, every act of cruelty played out for them in high definition. "An interesting management style you've all developed," I observed, watching them squirm in their seats, "fostering a culture of bullying, discrimination, and blatant harassment. Did you honestly think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't care how you treated people you considered beneath you?" "Catherine, honey," Mark began, his voice taking on that placating tone he always used when he was trying to talk his way out of being caught. "Oh, I think you've explained plenty," I cut him off. "In fact, you've been explaining yourselves for years. At every dinner party, every company event, every social gathering, you've made your characters abundantly clear." I stood up, smoothing down my suit jacket. "The board is waiting next door to formalize what you've already brought upon yourselves, your immediate termination for cause. All of you." I looked each man directly in the eye, saving Mark for last. "Though, I suppose I should thank you. You've made this decision remarkably easy for me." "You can't do this," Mark protested, his voice cracking. "I'm your husband." "Actually," I said with a cold smile, sliding my wedding ring off my finger and placing it on the table. "As of this morning, I'm just your CEO, and you're fired." The security officers stepped forward as I turned to leave. Behind me, I could hear the sputter of protests, the start of threats, the desperate pleas of bargaining. But I was already walking away, heading for the boardroom where the real work of cleansing my company was about to begin. After all, I had a business to run. The board meeting was as swift as it was decisive. 12 pairs of eyes followed my every move as I signed the official termination documents. Their expressions were a mixture of awe and shock, finally meeting their enigmatic CEO in person. But the real work was only just starting. As security escorted Mark and his cronies out of the building, I retreated to my private office, the mythical top-floor suite that had been the subject of so many rumors over the years. Lena followed me in, tablet in hand, ready to execute the next phase of the plan. "Their access has been completely revoked," she reported, swiping through a series of security protocols. "IT is freezing all their accounts and creating a forensic backup of all their data. Legal has already dispatched cease and desist orders to prevent any attempts at retaliation." I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching as Mark and his friends were escorted to their cars down below. Even from 20 stories up, I could see the profound shock in their posture, the utter disbelief in their stumbling gait. "What about the house?" I asked, thinking of the home Mark believed he had helped pay for. "Our security team is already there changing the locks. Your personal belongings have been moved to the penthouse, just as we planned." Lena paused, allowing herself a small, triumphant smile. "As for Mark's things, they'll be delivered to his mother's house by this evening." I nodded, a flicker of dark amusement passing through me as I remembered all the times Mark had bragged to his mother about how he was supporting me through my career struggles. The irony would not be lost on her. And the divorce papers? Being filed as we speak. The prenuptial agreement you had him sign is ironclad. He thought he was protecting his assets, never realizing he was signing away any claim to yours. A notification popped up on my private monitor. Mark was already attempting damage control, posting on a professional networking site about strategic differences with Apex Innovations management. I watched as Lena's team immediately countered his narrative with the truth, a carefully worded press release about the company's zero-tolerance policy for workplace harassment and discrimination. His profile still lists him as Director of Strategy, I noted dryly. Lena's fingers flew across her tablet. Not anymore. I sat down at my desk, my real desk, not the hidden one in my study at home, and began to review the contingency plans we had spent months preparing. Mark and his friends weren't idiots. Their wounded pride would quickly turn to anger, and with anger came the potential for retaliation. What about their non-competes, already activated? They won't be able to work in this industry for at least 3 years. We've also discreetly notified all major competitors about the circumstances of their termination. No reputable company will touch them. I pulled up the security footage from their exit interviews. Mark was still in a state of denial, threatening to expose me. Robert had broken down in tears upon realizing his stock options were now worthless. The others cycled between begging for a second chance and making empty threats. What about their projects? David has already assembled transition teams. No critical operations will be affected. Lena paused. Though I would suggest we conduct a full audit of everything they've touched in the last year. Make it 3 years, I corrected, recalling snippets of drunken conversations about creative accounting, and flag every client they've had personal contact with. My phone buzzed. It was Mark calling from his personal number. I declined the call, watching as it was added to a growing list of blocked numbers. His friends had been trying to reach me too, likely hoping to negotiate some kind of severance package. Should we issue a company-wide statement? Lena asked. I considered the shock waves that were undoubtedly moving through the building. By now, the entire company would know that their mysterious CEO was Mark's supposedly unemployable wife. The story would be spreading through every department, growing more dramatic with each retelling. Schedule an all-hands meeting for tomorrow morning, I decided. It's time they met their real CEO, not the caricature Mark created. A subtle alert flashed on my screen. Mark had arrived at his mother's house. The security feed showed him standing amidst boxes of his possessions, his mother's expression shifting from confusion to outright horror as he tried to explain the morning's events. His company car. GPS shows it's still in our parking garage. Security is on its way to retrieve it. I nodded, turning my attention to the stack of documents that required my immediate signature. Organizational charts needed to be redrawn, responsibilities had to be reassigned, and damage control with our major clients needed to commence. One more thing, Lena added, her tone softening slightly. The charity gala next month, the one where you met Mark. Cancel my RSVP, I said without hesitation, but double the company's donation, anonymously. The rest of the afternoon was a whirlwind of meetings, decisions, and strategic planning. I watched through various security feeds as Mark's office was packed up, his personal items cataloged and shipped away. His prime parking spot, the one he had bragged about to anyone who would listen, had already been reassigned to a newly promoted junior engineer. By evening, as the sun set over the city, Lena brought me one final report. They're all serving their garden leave from home. Security is monitoring their communications. No unusual activity yet. They're in shock, I finished for her. Give them a day, then the real reactions will start. I leaned back in my chair, finally allowing myself to feel the immense weight of the day. In less than 12 hours, I had shed a false identity, ended a marriage, fired 5 senior executives, and stepped fully into the public eye as a CEO. Was it worth it? Lena asked quietly, breaking protocol for a moment of genuine curiosity. I thought about the years of subtle humiliations, of watching Mark and his friends crush other people's careers for sport, of witnessing their casual cruelty toward anyone they deemed beneath them. Ask me again in a week, I replied, turning my gaze back to my monitors. There was still so much work to be done, a company to run and a reputation to rebuild. After all, revenge wasn't just about one dramatic, satisfying moment. It was about ensuring they could never recover enough to hurt anyone else ever again. The following morning brought a flurry of controlled chaos. The all-hands meeting was set for 10 a.m., but I was in the office at dawn. There were strategic moves to be made before I addressed the entire company. "We've got movement," Lena reported, striding into my office with her ever-present tablet. Mark tried to contact the Starlight Project lead at 3 a.m. Fortunately, we had already locked down all client communications. I pulled up the monitoring dashboard on my screen. In the 12 hours since their termination, each of the fired executives had made predictable, desperate moves. Robert had tried to download the entire client database just before his access was revoked. David, my plant, had documented every single attempt. What about their severance packages? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Voided due to documented gross misconduct. Our legal team has compiled an exhaustive brief. Lena's fingers flew across her tablet. Mark also tried to access his investment accounts around midnight. He seemed surprised to discover his stock options were completely worthless. I smiled, remembering all the times he had bragged about his company shares at dinner parties. He had never bothered to read the fine print in his contract regarding the misconduct clauses. And the others? 2 have already reached out to our competitors. We've documented the attempts, which are clear violations of their non-compete agreements. Lena paused. And Mark's mother has been quite vocal on social media about her daughter-in-law's betrayal. Betrayal. I pulled up the social media monitoring feed. The story was indeed spreading, but not in the way Mark had likely intended. Former employees were emerging from the woodwork, sharing their own stories of harassment and discrimination under his leadership. Each post only served to reinforce our narrative of a necessary corporate house cleaning. "Time for the next move," I announced, pulling up a carefully prepared email. With a single click, I sent out invitations for one-on-one meetings with every employee who had directly reported to Mark and his inner circle. "That's going to stir up some anxiety," Lena observed. "Good," I replied. "I want them off balance." I stood, smoothing my skirt. Have security perform another sweep of Mark's old office. Check for any hidden documents or devices he might have left behind. The morning unfolded like a meticulously played chess match. While Mark and his cronies were presumably nursing their wounds and plotting their revenge, we were systematically dismantling their entire corporate legacy. At 9:45, I stood before the mirror in my private bathroom, making the final adjustments to my appearance. The woman staring back at me bore little resemblance to the meek, unassuming wife Mark had mocked for years. Today's armor was a steel gray Armani suit, accessorized with quiet but undeniable power. "The auditorium is at capacity," Lena reported. "Everyone is waiting." I nodded, gathering my thoughts. "Start the recording." The all-hands meeting would be documented for legal purposes and to ensure our message reached every employee across all our global offices. As I walked onto the stage, the hushed whispers in the auditorium died instantly. "Good morning," I began, my voice carrying easily through the state-of-the-art sound system. "I'm Catherine Vance, the founder and CEO of Apex Innovations. Some of you may have known me as Mark's wife. As of today, you will know me as your leader." The silence was absolute. I could see the HR team squirming in the front row, no doubt remembering the sham interview from the day before. "Yesterday, we terminated 5 senior executives for cause. You have all heard the rumors. Yes, one of them was my husband, and yes, it was because of documented gross misconduct, harassment, and a systemic abuse of power." I paused, letting that sink in. But today is not about them. It's about us. It's about the company we are going to become, moving forward. For the next hour, I laid out my vision for Apex Innovations. With each point, I systematically dismantled the toxic, fear-based culture that Mark and his friends had cultivated. New reporting structures, enhanced HR protocols, anonymous feedback channels. Each announcement was a calculated move in our corporate chess game. "Finally," I concluded, "my door is open." Not metaphorically, but literally. Starting today, any employee can schedule time with me directly. There will be no gatekeepers and no filters. The applause that followed was tentative at first, but then it grew, swelling into a genuine ovation. As I left the stage, Lena showed me her tablet. The company's internal messaging system was exploding with positive responses. Back in my office, the next phase began. One by one, I met with Mark's former direct reports. Each conversation was a delicate dance of reassurance and assessment as I worked to identify potential allies and weed out any remaining threats. Mark called again, Lena reported between meetings. This time from a burner phone. He's demanding a private meeting. Document it with legal, I replied, reviewing the notes from my last meeting. And keep an eye on his mother's social media. She usually telegraphs his next move. By late afternoon, the corporate chessboard had shifted dramatically. 3 of Mark's most loyal managers had resigned, refusing to adapt to the new regime. 2 others had provided invaluable information about past misconduct in exchange for amnesty. The Starlight Project lead called, Lena announced. They want to meet the real CEO. I smiled, remembering Mark's mockery of my suggestions for their account. Schedule it for tomorrow and send them the presentation I've been working on, the one Mark rejected last month. A notification popped up on my screen. Mark had been spotted at a bar with Robert and 2 of the other former executives. Our surveillance team was already monitoring their conversation. They're plotting something, Lena observed. Of course they are, I replied, pulling up the contingency plans we had prepared months ago. Let them plot. Every move they make just gives us more ammunition. I turned to the window, watching the sunset paint the city skyline. Somewhere out there, 5 angry, entitled men were discovering just how thoroughly they had been outmaneuvered. But their game had ended yesterday. Mine was just beginning. Tomorrow, I told Lena, we begin phase 2. Let's see how they handle being the ones looking for a job. After all, in chess, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board, and I had been playing this game long before they even knew they were pieces. Dawn found me reviewing the surveillance footage from the bar where Mark and his cohorts had gathered. Their angry, Scotch-fueled conversations had provided exactly the ammunition we needed to fortify our legal position. They're planning to sue, Lena announced, entering my office with 2 cups of coffee. Mark contacted 3 different law firms this morning. I accepted the coffee, hiding a small smile. Show me. She pulled up the morning's intelligence report. Mark had indeed been busy, but each of the firms he had contacted was already subtly tied to Apex Innovations through various shell companies and investment portfolios. Any attempt to retain them would immediately hit a conflict of interest wall. He's also been reaching out to our major clients, Lena continued, especially the Starlight Project. Forward me the recordings. The audio files played through my private speaker system. It was Mark's voice still carrying that familiar, entitled confidence, trying to convince our clients that he had been wrongfully terminated, that his wife had manipulated her way into power, and that the company was now unstable under my leadership. And Mr. Thompson's response? I asked, though I could already guess. Lena played the next clip. Thompson's voice was ice cold. Mark, your wife's proposal last week was brilliant. The one you dismissed? Yeah, we found out about that. Don't contact us again. I pulled up our evidence database on my secure terminal. For over a year, we had been constructing an unassailable case against Mark and his inner circle. Every instance of harassment, every discriminatory comment, every abuse of power, all of it meticulously documented with timestamps and corroborating evidence. The board wants an update, Lena noted. They're concerned about potential blowback. Schedule a meeting for this afternoon and bring me everything from the last 3 years. Emails, meeting recordings, expense reports. It's time to show them exactly why this house cleaning was necessary. The morning unfolded in a series of precise strategic moves. While Mark and his friends were burning through their savings on fruitless legal consultations, we were systematically reinforcing our position. The HR department provided a thick file of formal complaints that had been buried under the previous management. The IT department extracted emails that had been accidentally deleted. Former employees began reaching out, eager to offer sworn testimony about the toxic culture they had been forced to flee. Mark's mother is escalating her social media campaign, Lena reported. Now she's claiming you seduced him as part of a long-term corporate takeover scheme. I laughed, pulling up the prenuptial agreement Mark had insisted upon. Send her lawyers a copy of this, the one her son demanded to protect his assets from his supposedly gold-digging wife. By midday, our legal team had compiled a devastating brief. It included every instance of Mark bragging about manipulating stock options, every recorded conversation about sidelining qualified female candidates, and every documented abuse of company resources, all presented in damning, irrefutable detail. The surveillance team picked up something interesting, Lena said, rushing into my office after lunch. They met with someone from our competitor, Orion Dynamics, last night. I pulled up the footage. Through the high-end microphones we had planted, Mark could be heard offering to reveal company secrets in exchange for executive positions for himself and his friends. Send copies to their lawyers, I instructed, and to the board of Orion Dynamics. Let's see how quickly they distance themselves. The afternoon board meeting was a masterclass in corporate strategy. One by one, I presented the irrefutable evidence of why each terminated executive had to go. The board's concerns about public perception melted away as they realized the sheer depth of the corruption we had excised. There's more, I announced, pulling up financial records. We've traced a series of irregular payments through their expense accounts. I suspect the SEC would be very interested in some of these transactions. Mark is on his way up, Lena interrupted, checking her tablet. He somehow convinced the lobby security to let him in. I smiled, pulling up the lobby camera feed. No, I convinced security to let him in. Watch. On the screen, Mark stormed through the lobby, his expensive suit now wrinkled, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and alcohol. He was clutching a folder that he undoubtedly believed contained damaging information about me. Should I have security stop him? Lena asked. Not yet. Let's see what he thinks he has. A few minutes later, Mark burst into the boardroom, his triumphant expression faltering as he saw me calmly seated at the head of the table. I have proof, he announced, waving his folder in the air. Proof that she orchestrated this whole thing. You mean proof that I founded this company? That I built it from nothing? That I've been running it successfully while you took credit for my strategies? I stood up slowly. Or do you mean proof that I've been documenting your gross misconduct for years while you mocked my supposed unemployment? The board members watched in silence as Mark's confidence completely crumbled. You trapped me, he stammered. No, Mark, you trapped yourself. Every time you belittled a candidate, every time you pushed aside a qualified woman, every time you laughed at my expense, you built this case. You built this case against yourself. I nodded to Lena, who pulled up our complete evidence file on the room's massive screens. Mark watched in horror as years of his own misconduct played out in high definition. Your choices, I continued calmly, are simple. You can leave now, respect the non-compete agreement, and keep whatever shred of dignity you have left. Or you can fight this and watch as every sordid detail of your behavior becomes a matter of public record. You can't, he began. Security, I interrupted, pressing a button on my desk. Please escort Mr. Morrison out, and this time revoke his lobby access permanently. As security led him away, I turned back to the board. Now, about those irregular financial transactions. The rest of the afternoon was spent solidifying our legal fortress. Every piece of evidence was cataloged, every testimony was recorded, and every document was notarized. By evening, we had built a case so solid that no reputable law firm would touch Mark's claims with a 10-foot pole. They're meeting again tonight, Lena reported as darkness fell. Same bar. Good, I replied, reviewing the latest surveillance request. Let's hear what other evidence they're willing to give us. After all, the best case is built by letting your opponents think they're winning, right up until the moment they realize they've lost everything. The bar surveillance proved to be more valuable than we could have ever hoped. Drunk on expensive whiskey and their own wounded pride, Mark and his friends spent hours inadvertently confessing to years of corporate malfeasance. "Play that section again," I instructed Lena the next morning, leaning forward in my chair. Through our high-quality surveillance feed, Mark's slurred voice filled my office. "Remember that merger last year? The one that made us all look like geniuses? Well, let me tell you how we really pulled that one off." What followed was a detailed confession of insider trading, complete with names, dates, and dollar amounts. "Send this to legal," I ordered, "and notify the SEC anonymously. It's time to create our perfect storm." Lena's fingers flew across her tablet. "Mark has already started selling his personal stocks. The others are following suit." "Perfect." I pulled up our contingency plans. "Activate Protocol Thunder." Protocol Thunder was the culmination of months of meticulous planning, a carefully orchestrated series of events designed to trap Mark and his cohorts in their own web of deceit. The first phase began immediately. "Leak the merger investigation to the financial press," I instructed, "but make it look like it came from a concerned former employee." Within hours, the story hit the major business news networks. Apex Innovations stock took a small, predictable dip. Mark and his friends, already paranoid and watching their investments like hawks, would see it as their chance to get out before the crash. "They're panicking," Lena reported, monitoring their frantic phone calls. All 5 of them are calling their brokers simultaneously. I watched the trading monitors as they frantically sold off their shares, trying to get ahead of what they believed was a coming disaster. With each sale, they were digging themselves deeper into a legal quagmire. "Now," I said with a nod to Lena, "release phase 2. The press release went out company-wide and to all major news outlets. Apex Innovations was announcing a major restructuring and a massive new expansion. Our stock price shot up within minutes. But Mark and his friends had already sold their shares at a loss, a clear case of attempted market manipulation based on insider knowledge. Mr. Thompson from the Antitrust Commission is on line 1, Lena announced. I took the call on speaker. Catherine Vance. Ms. Vance, we've received some very interesting information regarding last year's merger. Yes, I replied smoothly. We've been conducting our own internal investigation. I'd be happy to share our findings, including some rather illuminating surveillance footage from a local bar last night. The pieces were all falling into place. By midday, the SEC had opened a formal investigation into Mark and his friends' trading activities. The Antitrust Commission was reviewing the merger, and our stock price was soaring as the market responded enthusiastically to our expansion announcement. Mark is trying to leave the country, Lena reported, checking her surveillance feeds. His passport was mysteriously flagged at the airport. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. How unfortunate. And the others? Robert is having a breakdown in his broker's office. 2 more are meeting with criminal defense lawyers. The last one is currently attempting to delete his entire email history, not realizing we already have copies of everything. The afternoon brought even more developments. Our anonymous tips had sparked internal investigations at 3 other companies where Mark and his friends had previously worked. Former colleagues, sensing blood in the water, began coming forward with their own stories of misconduct. Their lawyers are requesting a meeting, Lena announced. They're offering to settle. Decline, I replied, watching the latest news coverage. Let them sweat. By evening, the perfect storm was in full swing. The SEC investigation had expanded to include their personal trading accounts. The Antitrust Commission had frozen their assets pending review, and 3 separate class action lawsuits had been filed by former employees, alleging systematic discrimination. Mark's mother has gone quiet on social media, Lena noted with a hint of satisfaction. She probably saw the insider trading allegations, I replied. Even she can't spin that positively. A notification popped up on my screen. Mark was attempting to access his frozen accounts, growing increasingly desperate as each transaction was declined. Should we release the bar footage to the media? Lena asked. Not yet. I stood, walking to the window. Let's see how they handle tomorrow first. I thought about the prenup Mark had insisted upon, thinking he was protecting himself from a gold-digging wife. How ironic that it would now protect my assets from being entangled in his legal troubles. Send them all meeting invitations for tomorrow morning, I instructed. 9 a.m. sharp? They won't come, Lena predicted. Oh, they will. I turned from the window, my reflection hard and clear in the darkening glass, because right now I'm their only hope of survival. As night fell over the city, I reviewed tomorrow's script one final time. In less than 12 hours, Mark and his friends would be sitting in my office, broken and desperate, as I presented them with their options, the choice between total destruction and merely complete humiliation. Their security badges are ready, Lena said, placing 5 visitor passes on my desk. I picked one up, running my thumb over Mark's haggard photo. Tomorrow, then. After all, the perfect storm wasn't just about destruction. It was about forcing your enemies to acknowledge the blinding light of the lightning right before the thunder struck. 9 a.m. arrived with the precision of a well-conducted symphony. One by one, Mark and his former colleagues shuffled into my office, mere shadows of their former arrogant selves. Their expensive suits were rumpled, their faces gaunt from sleepless nights and mounting legal pressure. "Gentlemen," I greeted them, remaining seated behind my desk. "I believe you've all had an interesting week." Mark couldn't meet my gaze. Robert was visibly trembling. The others stared at their visitor badges as if they couldn't quite comprehend how far they had fallen. "The board is waiting," I announced, standing. "Shall we?" They followed me like condemned men walking to the gallows, down the hall to the executive boardroom. Through the glass walls, they could see the full board of directors seated around the massive table, along with our entire legal team and several representatives from the SEC. "Before we begin," I said, pausing at the door, "I want you to understand something. What happens in this room over the next hour will determine not just your professional futures, but your personal freedom." The boardroom fell silent as we entered. Lena stood by the presentation screen, ready to begin. The SEC representatives had their notebooks open, pens poised. Members of the board, distinguished guests, I began, taking my place at the head of the table. "We are here today to address several serious matters concerning corporate governance, financial misconduct, and a systemic abuse of power." With a nod to Lena, the presentation began. On the massive screen, the evidence of their misdeeds played out in devastating detail. Trading records, surveillance footage, email chains, recorded conversations, a complete and damning catalog of their corporate destruction. "As you can see," I continued, as Mark sank lower in his chair, "the pattern of misconduct extends far beyond simple workplace harassment. We are looking at securities fraud, insider trading, and criminal conspiracy." The SEC representatives were taking rapid notes. The faces of the board members had turned to stone. Robert looked like he was about to faint. "However," I said, pausing to let the tension build, "Apex Innovations is prepared to offer a limited amnesty agreement, a one-time offer with no negotiations." That got their attention. 5 heads snapped up, a flicker of desperate hope warring with suspicion in their eyes. Lena distributed thick document folders to each of them. "The terms are simple," I explained. "Full cooperation with all ongoing investigations. Complete disclosure of all misconduct, whether previously discovered or not. The return of all profits from irregular trading activities. And most importantly, a public acknowledgement of your actions." "You want us to confess?" Mark finally found his voice, though it cracked on the last word. "I want you to face the consequences of your choices," I corrected him. "Sign these agreements now and Apex Innovations will not press its own criminal charges. Refuse, and the SEC has enough evidence in this room to ensure you all spend considerable time in federal prison." The board members watched impassively as the 5 men frantically flipped through the documents. Their lawyers, seated behind them, were already nodding grimly. "You have 5 minutes to decide," I announced, checking my watch. After that, this offer expires, and we will proceed with full prosecution. The next few minutes were filled with desperate, whispered conversations between the men and their attorneys. I could see the exact moment each one of them broke, their signatures appearing on the documents, one by one. The rest of the hour was spent outlining our path forward: new corporate governance structures, enhanced compliance protocols, and a complete restructuring of the executive team. The board, having witnessed the precision with which I had handled the crisis, approved every single proposal unanimously. One last thing, I added as the meeting drew to a close. I wanted on record that every employee who was affected by the previous management's discriminatory practices will be reviewed for either reinstatement or appropriate compensation. The board's approval was immediate. After all, it was a small price to pay to avoid the publicity nightmare we had just saved them from. Later, back in my office, Lena brought me the preliminary depositions. "They're singing like canaries," she reported. "Each one is trying to save himself by incriminating the others." I scanned the documents, noting how quickly they had turned on one another. "Make sure their confessions are properly recorded and witnessed. We don't want any of them trying to retract their statements later." Through my window, I could see Mark being escorted to a waiting car, his career and reputation in tatters. His lawyer was already on the phone, presumably trying to salvage what little he could from the wreckage of his client's life. "What about their trading records?" I asked Lena. "They're being combed through by forensic accountants. Initial estimates suggest they'll each have to repay several million in ill-gotten gains." I nodded, turning back to my desk. The company's stock was up 15% on the news of the governance changes. The business papers were already hailing Apex Innovations as a model of corporate accountability. "Schedule a company-wide meeting for tomorrow," I instructed. "It's time to rebuild what they tried to destroy." Lena paused at the door. Was it all worth it? I thought about the years of watching them crush dreams, bully subordinates, and mock anyone they deemed inferior, about all the careers they had derailed and the lives they had impacted. "Ask the people who are about to get their jobs back," I replied. "Ask the women who will no longer have to face harassment. Ask everyone who believed they would never see justice. After all, the best revenge isn't just about punishment. It's about ensuring positive change for those who were left behind." The days following the board meeting unfolded like a carefully orchestrated domino effect. Each morning brought new revelations, each afternoon new consequences, and each evening, new victories. "Mark's criminal defense lawyer just quit," Lena announced, entering my office with the morning briefing. "Apparently, he tried to recant parts of his confession. I pulled up the surveillance feed from his deposition room. Send them the video of his voluntary confession, and the one where his own lawyer advised him of his rights 3 separate times. The fallout was spreading far beyond our corporate walls. 3 other companies had launched internal investigations after discovering similar patterns of misconduct during Mark's and his friends' previous employments. Their professional networks were crumbling as former allies rushed to distance themselves. "Robert attempted suicide," Lena reported quietly, placing a news clipping on my desk. "Is he stable?" "Yes, he's under psychiatric observation." I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. "Make sure his medical bills are covered, anonymously, and have HR fast-track the performance reviews of anyone he harassed or discriminated against." The media was having a field day. Business journals were running in-depth exposés on toxic corporate culture. Women's magazines wanted to interview me about breaking the glass ceiling. Tech blogs were analyzing how the phantom CEO had orchestrated such a perfect takedown. "Mark's mother gave an interview," Lena said, pulling up the video. I watched as the woman who had once boasted about her successful son now tearfully apologized for enabling his destructive behavior. The interview ended with her announcing a sizable donation to a workplace harassment prevention program. His wife filed for divorce this morning, along with the wives of 3 of the others. They're all claiming they had no knowledge of the financial fraud. I turned to the window, watching the city below. Somewhere out there, Mark was probably sitting in his mother's guest room, watching his entire world implode on cable news. His assets were frozen, his reputation was destroyed, his marriage was over, and his future was a labyrinth of legal proceedings. The reinstatement interviews are going well, Lena continued, changing the subject. 12 former employees have already accepted offers to return. Among them was Jennifer Chen, no relation, a brilliant programmer Mark had driven out of the company 2 years ago. She was now slated to head our new AI division, her expertise finally recognized and valued. The Starlight Project? They doubled their contract with us. They're impressed with our new leadership and transparency initiatives. Jennifer's team apparently solved a problem they've been struggling with for years. I thought about all the times Mark had dismissed Jennifer's ideas, mocked her suggestions, and made her doubt her own brilliance. Now, she was leading what would become our most profitable division. Any recent contact attempts? Lena checked her logs. Mark tried to reach out through a professional networking site last week. His profile still lists him as our former director of strategy, though anyone who searches his name gets a very different story. The internet never forgets. Every article about workplace harassment, every exposé on corporate fraud, every cautionary tale about abusive power, their names were now attached to all of them. The documentary crew is requesting another interview, Lena added. They're calling it Glass Ceiling Shattered. The focus is on corporate transformation and women in leadership. I shook my head. Direct them to our successful division heads instead. Jennifer, Maria, Sophia, they're the ones doing the real work of rebuilding. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark's mother. Since her public apology, she had become an unlikely ally in the fight for corporate culture reform, giving talks about the dangers of enabling toxic behavior. I had been anonymously funding her speaking tour. The board meeting is in 10 minutes, Lena reminded me. They want to discuss international expansion. I gathered my materials, pausing at the office door. The nameplate read simply, Catherine Vance, CEO. No more shadows, no more masks, no more pretense. It's been exactly 6 months, Lena noted, falling into step beside me. Any regrets? I thought about Mark's last words to me in the boardroom, his final, pathetic attempt at manipulation. I really did love you, you know. No, I replied, striding toward the conference room. No regrets, just lessons learned. The lessons weren't just about revenge. They were about power, responsibility, and the obligation to use both wisely. They were about creating something better from the ashes of destruction. The employee mentorship program has a waiting list, Lena reported as we walked. Turns out people are eager to learn and grow when they're not afraid of being mocked. That was the real victory. Not the fall of Mark and his friends, but the rise of everyone they had tried to keep down. Every promoted employee, every implemented idea, every positive change was a testament to what could grow when you finally removed the poison from the soil. One last thing, Lena said as we reached the boardroom. HR reported 0 harassment complaints this quarter. It's the first time in company history. I paused, letting that sink in. The human cost of Mark's leadership style had been immeasurable, but the healing was measurable, quantifiable, and very, very real. Inside the boardroom, the board members were already seated. These meetings were different now, more collaborative, more focused on long-term growth than short-term profits. The fear of speaking up had been replaced by the excitement of possibility. Shall we begin? I took my seat at the head of the table, feeling the weight of responsibility and the lightness of vindication in equal measure. After all, the best revenge isn't just about destroying what was wrong, it's about building something better in its place. And as I looked around at what Apex Innovations had become, I knew that the real victory wasn't in Mark's fall. It was in everyone else's rise. Let's talk about the future, I said, opening my folder, because that's what remained after revenge. Not the fleeting satisfaction of destruction, but the enduring responsibility of creation. And I was ready for both. End of story.